hadn't received enough teaching on an offering.
That is such a good point.
I am, without sounding prideful or arrogant, I am financially independent. I don't have to struggle in my life. I never have to worry about anything. Me and Kathy, without sounding prideful or arrogant, can go anywhere in the world that we want to. Thank you, Barry. Do what we want, when we want, where we want, how much we want. My daughter told me the other day, Daddy, I have never seen you sick.
Never.
She's 40 years old. I said, we tried sick. We didn't like it. We tried broke, and we will never do that again as long as we ever live. Because when you don't know, everything I've touched has prospered.
Talk about the house.
I live in the biggest house in the state of Louisiana.
Say it again.
I have the biggest house of any preacher in America.
Tell them what you named the house.
I have a name to my house, La Maison de Rêve, the house of dreams. You want to know how big it is?
Yes!
It's 40,000 square foot.
Yes!
It's not to show off. And it is a plantation home.
Did he say plantation?
And it is a mansion. And what makes a mansion a mansion? Big.
Big.
That's the curveball. Okay, we're back in the seat again here.
So, Greg, the director just throws these curveballs at us.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the question: is that how people feel about organized religion? I mean, I get the humor, because people do use humor to really get into some of these difficult conversations. Would you say, is that why people are leaving organized religion, because of what we just saw?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of everybody else, but for myself, if I was sitting in that pew, I think I would walk out of that church and probably never come back, because for me, I have a hard time correlating what I read in the scriptures for what he was speaking about here today. Saying that, he has a very popular presentation, and there is many churches and pastors and organizations that have a very much a prosperity theology. And if I were to summarize it, and again, this is my summarization of it, is that Jesus was poor so you could be rich. Jesus took pain so you will never experience pain. Jesus went to the cross so you never have to go to the cross. So it's in that context that they justify it.
Yeah.
Now, each one of these churches will present it slightly different, but that is a very typical comment that I have gleaned from some of the very insightful sermons that I have heard from these people. So, yeah, on the surface, that sounds really good. But that's not what the scriptures are all about. It's not about everybody's going to be a multimillionaire if you go to this guy's church. The Christian movement is not about prosperity. The Christian movement is about something radically different.
So are we saying here that this could very well be a reason why the numbers are going down? Like we shared some statistics at the beginning here.
Yeah.
At the beginning, the numbers are actually going down, but the meta narrative, like you're expressing, is still saying, well, no, to have a life of faith, you need to belong to one of these institutions.
Yeah, it does. And to use your terminology of the last couple of sessions, is that you commented, said there's an elephant in the room and we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And for me, the elephant in this room is to largely this. As a young person, I had the good fortune of growing up in a wonderful home.
Mm-hmm.
And we attended church as a family. Make the long story short, in my Christian organization, Heritage, there was a kind of unspoken rule that you needed to be in this church or a church for you to receive salvation and spend eternity.
Yeah.
Over the time, and I appreciate this, is that as people have gotten to a greater understanding of scriptures, it's not about some organization, not about some name on some book. It is about a relationship with the Creator. And so saying that, you don't, if you take that position, then there's no reason, salvation reason, to be associated with a organized religion, where before you needed to, because if you weren't on that church's books or something of that presentation.
Yeah, you were damned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding has rolled across many of the church-going people in North America. The realization came on, my salvation doesn't depend on my attending this thing on a weekly basis.
I totally agree with you on that, and I'm wondering, Greg, if that is actually a sign of institutional religion failing the people that have been faithful to it. You know what? Like we always say here, maybe the best place to start is at the beginning. What are we talking about when we say institutional religion? Like, what kind of definitions are we using here? Here is one, and I think we can agree on and know what we're talking about. Organized religion or institutional religion is a structured system of faith or worship, especially one followed by a large number of people, such as Christianity, Islam, or Judaism. Okay, so we're talking about structured institutions here that have a huge following of people. Now, within Christianity, we will have different denominational structures which have, absolutely huge following of people. And the numbers that we're just reading are saying these institutions are pretty much leaking people. People are leaving and they do not associate with them anymore. And your argument that you just brought up to this is that one of the reasons could be that people are realizing that actually I do not need to belong here to receive what I want in a life of faith. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
So they are walking out because they realize that, no, this is actually not essential.
Yep.
So are we saying institutional or organized religion has run its course?
I think there's a strong case to be made for an organization, and that, when I'm saying organization, an organized religion, I think there is this thing called symmetry. When you have two or three people together, you get much more efficiency out of it than, of course, you multiply yourself by one. That happens. So the comment that I think most Christians remember from their study of the scriptures is that Christ has said we need to take the gospel to the world. there is a number of references about taking the good news to the world, and it is good news.
Yeah.
And so one of the things organized religion can do is to provide a mechanism, an avenue for efficiency, and it's a whole program that allows the church group to be very efficient at getting resources and people into different parts of the world.
Is it working, Greg? According to the numbers we just read, it is not.
Well, my understanding, and perhaps you can speak to this, is that in North America, the church growth in most churches is under 2% at best. We are, the population in North America is growing faster than the church growth is happening.
Yeah.
Many churches, many very popular churches, are running well under 1% growth,
Yeah.
which in reality is not enough to sustain itself.
Yeah. And also, if I can add on to that, that most of that growth is either by birth or by immigration.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah,
technically, it is really not growth.
that's right. There is one exception.
Okay.
From the great continent of Africa,
Yeah.
there is active church growth across the continent of Africa. And today I understand the continent of Africa holds more Christians than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah. I've heard China also.
Yes, and again, nobody's really quite clear on the numbers in China. But
Yeah.
what I'm coming to is that there is pockets and regions of the world where Christian church growth is taking place, and at a very relatively rapid rate compared to North America. So then the issue is, how is it that at some locations in the world it has meaning, and in other locations in the world it lacks meaning?
Greg, I'm going to throw something in our conversation here. There's this fancy word that people like to people who work on that side of the street, the myology. The systems we use and the approaches and techniques we use in the spreading of the good news, the Christian message. Okay. There's some really bad myology out there. And this is my argument now.
Yes.
And that bad myology gives us bad results that we then take out and we make statistical evidence in a society that operates under a different mindset. So for example, the society where I grew up, Southern Africa, if someone visits you, they've traveled a long way. You try and be respectful of the fact that they decided to travel this long way to come and be with you. Okay, that's number one. And secondly, you try and support them in each and every way possible. So you can pick any guy from the streets here and you give them a script to read. Where I grew up, where you read that script, tell everyone that Jesus loves them, and then he asks them to stand up if they believe. I guarantee you people are going to stand up because we don't want to be rude. We're going to stand up and then that person is going to say, everyone repented. That's the statistic they're going to take back. And I'm saying, from a missiological perspective, Greg, I hear but this is a different culture we're talking about, and different cultures have ways of processing. In a North American culture, people generally shoot straight.
Yep.
Even though there is that concept of, you should always have more positives for a negative and all of that. Where I grew up, you have to have the art of beating around the bush. You know, you don't go straight at something. You know, you have a story and you go right around in circles and so on and so on. So in such a society, you come and bring your message. We won't just plain out disagree with you, like you see in the political system and even the religious system in North America, where someone will say, I don't agree with that. You see it in parliament, people disagreeing. That's just how they are. And so I am somewhat skeptical of those numbers. That's what I'm saying.
Sure,
I'm somewhat skeptical of those numbers. And I think looking at my generation, I mean, we grew up in Southern Africa, and I can tell you only a handful of us still identify as religious.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You know, but the numbers say otherwise. The numbers make for good news in the Christian world, but I don't know. I would say my experience says no. And here's another thing, I might as well throw it in there also. From a missiological perspective, you know, if you come to a group of people who are thirsty and you say to them, I am here to present this God who deals with thirst. We're in a crisis and we're reevaluating everything about what we believe. Of course, what we have to lose, we'll try your God.
Sure.
Okay, your God is going to deal with the thirst problem. A year down the line, when we've realized that actually we can dig wells and, you know, we can take seawater and purify it, or we can, guess what we do? Hey, we send your God packing because we have other options. And hence, as fellows come to at least Southern Africa, they preach, bring the good news. Thousands of people might stand up, but how many of those people remain in the long run in that faith? The numbers they always bring back. Now, I might be wrong. I'm sure there are one or two people who have done it out there, but I am yet to see someone who brings the numbers that say something along the lines of 60,000 people believed, and here we are 2 years later, we still account for all 60,000 of them. Oh, and 10 years later, here we are, the 60,000 are still there, and we have gained this much. No, it's always just that part that I did this and so many came. I'm skeptical.
And being that you come from that part of the world, you have credibility and the reason to make that comment, and I accept that. One of the things that, if I remember, is from Psychology Today.
Yeah.
They pointed out that 51.8% of the people outgrew their faith, and that's a very interesting comment.
Yeah.
Outgrowing your faith.
Yeah. What does that look like? I mean, in an example that I just told you of, hey, this God will give you water, and then the moment we outgrow that, we walk away from this God.
Yeah.
Okay. So 50 what percent? 58, you said?
51.8.
51.8% left because they outgrew.
Or their expectations of how God, religion, it was not met. The next one is that 22% left because of religious leaders having sexual abuse issues.
Okay, now that's a big one. But Greg, before we even get to this one, I feel like we need to go back to the first one again.
Yeah.
So you're saying 51.8% they reported that they left the church for some sort of intellectual reason.
Yes.
Or, like you said, they outgrew the faith. I mean, Greg, is that saying that the faith, organized religion, became irrelevant to their lives?
Yes. That's exactly how I would put it. It doesn't have the meaning, it doesn't have the bite to it that it did before.
Yeah, so that is a problem.
And that is a fixable problem, in my opinion.
Fixable.
I think the church has a capacity to be relevant. I think the church has the capacity not only to make an impact in the world, but actually the people that are in the church, they should be the ones that are being charged. They're the ones that should be growing. They're the ones that should be in a very dynamic relationship. And the church should always be ahead of them. They should not outgrow the church. The church should outgrow the people. If you put it in that time.
Yeah, you just lost me, Greg. You absolutely lost me here. Church and people, and people the church.
That's a good point. What I'm coming to, and what I said poorly, is that the leadership of the church should, and again, be looking at social issues and saying, how does our understanding of scriptures, how does our understanding of God, what is it that we need to re-look at, reevaluate? Do we need to get better understandings and ultimately bring back to the congregations, back to the parishioners? Here is something that we have found that is speaking to the issues that you are dealing with. So they should be a proactive role is really what I am suggesting.
Yeah, that's I hear that, but I get the sense, and I don't know if I'm the only one who senses this, that organized religion actually avoids those things because they don't want to get caught in the wave and the messes of everyday living. I get the sense that organized religion likes to hold on to what is old, tried, and tested, and then stand there and wait to see if this new wave is going to be good or bad, and then they can step in and say, okay, now we embrace this. Like, am I the only one? Greg, have you seen that?
Yeah, and I think we can follow that. Just to take my understanding is that when a new church, a new belief system is established, there's typically a dynamic excitement. The founders, the pool of people that actually have caught that vision, have a new and clear understanding that has motivated people to rally around them. As they get older and pass away, the next generation knew the founders and they still were running with it. So generation 3, now they don't know the founders, but they know the context that it was presented in, and they try and crystallize it. Let's nail it down. Let's make sure that we don't lose the mission of our founders.
Yeah.
And by putting it in concrete, they feel that they have preserved it, and they have. But the very thing that had got the church organization going, with the dynamic, the excitement, the new understandings, have been now set in stone.
Yeah, so the church is no longer as adaptable to how life is changing, because life is not set in stone.
Precisely. Now you and I come along and other people come along and say, you know what, the world is already over here. It's not what it was 200 years ago. There's a disconnect.
Yeah. And I might as well just throw this, what's the English statement, cat among the pigeons?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. The movement for women's rights. women as equals to their male counterparts. Women have had to fight for the right to vote. It has been a tough journey for women. Now, at first, the church, organized religion, absolutely didn't want anything to do with this. After all, in past conversations you and I have heard, we have spoken about this the patriarchal, unshaking patriarchal structure in that church seemed to grow in. Church seemed to cut its teeth on this patriarchal structure. And for the longest time, they wouldn't touch this issue with, what's the statement, a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't touch this issue. And even in the days we live in now, I mean, you just need to watch the organized religions around you. It's still a very sensitive subject, What role can women play in the church? That is still sensitive. Organized religion still would rather not touch this because it is just not ripe for them to embrace it yet. And I am saying, and what I think the statistics are saying is that 51.8% of people are actually leaving because of that.
Yeah, that's a very powerful point. We have to we have to adjust, and I say we,
Yeah.
and in loose terms, for the church to be changing. One of the things, as you know, I grew up on a farm, and to illustrate what is taking place in the farming industry and what I'm proposing and pointing to in the religious world is, I think, a rather cute and funny story.
Yeah.
My father, who started the farm, planted out this variety called wine sap apples. And at that time in the community, the standard spacing was 40 feet by 40 feet.
Okay.
Which is unbelievably huge planting.
Yeah.
My dad was a bit of a revolutionary man, and he planted it 38 by 38 feet. And many of the other farmers came by and they shook their head and says, "Mr. Thorpe, what are you doing? This is insanity." You know? Today, if you look at many of the orchards, they are planted in under 20 inches in the row. It has morphed. It has changed. There's different varieties, different things. To be able to adapt, to be able to adjust, it is survival. And I think that is the key, is that we can't, as much as we may like some of these wonderful old sayings and wonderful old understandings, it's not necessarily that they're wrong, but we have to take, again, a case in point is women's rights. How does that integrate into the church? How do we facilitate that? Simple things like that. If we go back, I'm going to go back to the story of the Garden of Eden that you and I have talked about a number of times. Tell me the term that you used for human that was used in the story. Do you remember sharing that with us?
Oh my goodness, Mr. Director, do you want to play that back? I don't remember. What did I say?
Well, I was referring to them as man. And you said, And you said,
I think the issue of the male and female Adam, is that the one?
Yeah. They're the atoms.
Yeah, the atoms. Yeah.
The atoms. Implying that the naming was a fairly generic term. The term Adam and Eve was associated actually afterwards. So at the time of their birth,
Yeah.
in a loose sense, they were referred to atoms.
Yeah.
And atoms imply that there was equality.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take that basic, simple, and beautiful truth and apply that today, then we as a organized church said, you know what? Even though I am a male and I have been taking the role of leadership in the church, it doesn't make me any more special than my counterpart who is a female.
Yeah.
And we should endorse the role of a female in leadership. Simple things like that.
Yeah. I think, and hey, I think we need to put it out there that we are just reacting to research that has been done by others in their field of expertise, and was saying we see it in our immediate context. And I think most people who are watching this can also confirm that they see this in their immediate context. Organized religion is often always the last, not only to embrace, but to join the conversation in a constructive and positive way. We're saying here conversation is important. Now, as someone who has worked with organized religions before, I get the sense, and I know that in those cases, people are afraid of tarnishing the image of the institution. Because, you ride one bandwagon and then you realize that, oops, we're actually wrong. And then it's a bit embarrassing to go back and say, okay, but I think there's an element of authenticity that comes with that. And I don't think organized religion should be afraid of that. I don't think people should be afraid to come out and say, hey, we thought this was okay, and we are, upon further realization, we're realizing that, you know what, no, it's actually not okay. It just makes them authentic. And that
more credible.
authenticity is attractive. It's better than saying, we will have no comment on this. Pretty recently, man, I gotta throw this cat among the pigeons because George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, that just took the entire, it's fair to say the entire continent and even the world. People were talking about this. It was on the news. It was everywhere. I wonder if anyone has done any research on how many organized religious institutions came out with a statement. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. How many of them decided that, you know what, this is something that the communities we exist in are taking seriously. So we're going to come out and stand with them. And make a statement about this. Usually religions would rather say, you know what, let me let this play out. And then after it plays out, I'll come in with some sort of wisdom or something. And therefore, there is that disconnect. And I think some of what we're getting to in the statistics you just brought up, when they're saying they reported leaving because of these intellectual reasons, like it became irrelevant to them. The institution began to exist for itself, to protect itself. And I don't think religious institutions should exist for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. when the organization becomes more valuable or perceives itself to be more valuable than its parishioners, then it becomes irrelevant. It loses credibility.
Yeah.
It might be wonderful and might be doing a lot of great things, but it loses credibility. And the longer it takes to make those changes, the more credibility drains out.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we need to talk about that. How easy is it for, in your view, Greg, how easy is it for organized religion, these big institutions, be it under the umbrella of Christianity or Islam or Judaism, how easy is it for them to make changes?
Well, I can only speculate because
Yeah.
I don't work in that realm. But typically, there's layers and layers of bureaucracy. There's decision makers that go a mile high and much discussion. And I'm not saying that these, at one time, they added value. I'm sure there was a reason for putting some of these groups of people that had control on it. But at the ground level, where you and I operated,
Yeah.
we need to be able to respond to the blood on the streets, not about some policy.
I like that. We have blood on the streets. We need to respond.
Yeah,
Or else we become irrelevant. Why are we here?
exactly. Yeah.
No, let's go to the next one. We have just
Yeah. So the next one is 22% leave because of sexual abuse by church leadership. That's
a huge one.
Yep.
Sexual abuse in the news recently. I mean, you don't have to go far before you come across this. It's out there.
Yep.
For the most part, I mean, in Canada, we recently had the leader of the Catholic Church come out to make an apology for the abuses that happened to the Native community. I mean, that was a big move. I'm forgetting the dates, Mr. Director. You probably will throw that into the screen here. But that took some priming.
Yeah.
It needed to gain momentum until that actually happened. And organized, I guess that issue of shame, Greg, I think it's that issue of shame that organized religion will naturally try and hide the shame than to come out and say, hey, this has happened in our system and it's wrong.
And I agree with you, it's wrong. In reading the scriptures and reading the life of Christ,
Yeah.
I see very few examples where they had to get a committee together, they had to get many meetings established before a person was to render apology.
Yeah.
You don't see that.
Yeah.
Christ's example, if say sorry, move on, deal with the problem. There is many examples that he points out. The Romans were a good example where they would force people to take their baggage
Yeah, for a mile, I think
a mile.
it was. Yeah.
And he says, take it for 2.
Yeah.
Well, if it was me, I would say, hey, I am not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
You guys take way too many taxes, etc., and now you want me to take it a mile. I figured that they should apologize to me. He says, go with the next step. So what I'm coming to is that we see, if you inverse that, you're seeing that a Christian should be the first to say, you know what, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I apologize. And what I'm coming to is that Christians aren't perfect. They do make mistakes.
Yeah.
But once that's pointed out to them, they have a responsibility to stay true to their belief system, is to be the first to say sorry. Say,
Yeah.
hey, I gotta, do something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea of trying to protect your image and therefore avoid owning up to some of these things. Like, now, I want to use some of the language that's in this, that we're reading. And Mr. Director, I think you should put up a link to this research, and our audience can just interact with this information from the American Psychological Association. It says that they live because of a reported religious trauma. Okay, we're talking about people who have experienced some sort of trauma, and within the institution, the organized religious institution, they did not find a place of safety or a place where that trauma could be processed. Instead, the institution chose to protect itself
Yes.
and not deal with the person that has gone through tremendous trauma, be the trauma, sexual or what have you. And I think that's a fair reason why people would walk away.
Absolutely. If you understand a church to be a place of safety,
Yeah.
and you send your child there believing that it is going to be essentially a wall from the evils of the world, so to speak,
Yeah.
only to discover that the leadership of that institution is abusing your child.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work very well.
No.
That is so wrong.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely wrong from the beginning, the get-go. It is unacceptable. There's never an excuse for that.
Yeah.
That is the one place that child should be the safest in. That's the one place that the child should know that I can go there and I will be okay.
Yeah.
I may not have ice cream, but I'm going to be safe there.
Yeah. I mean, the other word that is used there, Greg, that I think is worthy of a conversation is hypocrisy. People say one thing and do another.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
People say that, in this institution we value people and we do all of this, and my goodness, you receive so many scars there. And according to the research, the people who have been reported as having left the organized religion are saying, we saw this happening.
Yeah.
But I mean, on the hypocrisy part, I need to ask the question: do people stop participating in the political infrastructure of where they stay because politicians say one thing and do another?
No. Typically they don't.
Typically they don't. All they do is try and vote the next guy in and kick this one out.
Yeah.
Okay. Should people leave because of hypocrisy? Doesn't that just come with the field?
My speculation, and again, I'm just speculating, that many of the people that walk away said, you know what, I can't trust this organization. It abused me or my child or whatever it might be. But a percentage will say, I don't understand how that could have happened, but I still believe that there is a God, there is value to components of that.
Yeah.
And so I am convinced that not everybody that of that 22% has walked away from their quote faith. They've walked away from that organized religion component of it, and understandably and rightly so.
You are differentiating between someone walking away from faith and someone walking away from the institution.
Precisely, yeah.
That's a big one, Greg. That is a big one. I for one would like to know, and if there's someone out there who's watching this, if they could just reach out and let us know if that has been their experience. Just did you walk away from the faith, or did you walk away from the institution, or did you just walk away from it all?
Yeah.
Because it makes sense if the institution has done someone harm, the institution is not, or maybe that's a question, Greg, is the institution the guardian of the faith? Can you have the faith outside of the institution? Because I think the narrative that is out there, this big narrative out there amongst religious organizations, is that we are essential for your faith to exist. So can I leave the institution and hang on to the faith? Is that mega narrative? Is that?
I certainly believe you can, because the faith, and this is where I come back from my reading and my understanding, and I think this is critical and one that makes a difference with many organized religions. I am saved on a one-to-one relationship with my God Creator.
Yeah.
And that is fundamental to my understanding. It so happens that I have my favorite religious organization that I find, for my case, adds value. But that does not, they do not get me through the quote, the pearly gates. And many organizations do position themselves as, we are the conveyor belt, and you got to get on us to get through the pearly gates. That is not biblical.
So you are arguing that is actually not the case. The meta narrative that says you need the institution.
Yeah, the institution is no escalator to heaven.
Oh, I like that. The institution is not an escalator.
Yeah.
Someone else is, I guess. A relationship.
Someone else is, yeah.
Okay, let's carry on with the numbers now. So we have about 22% who are saying it's trauma or some sort of hypocrisy, sexual abuse scandal or something like that. All just fair arguments. Fair arguments. Places where institutional religion has failed, and in some cases continues to fail.
Yeah.
What else do you have?
So 15% is where people have experienced a social or personal loss, like the loss of child, etc. on it, where their expectations of what the church or God was to do, that expectation was not met. They were disappointed and in turn threw up their hands and walked away.
So there was some sort of inability to contextualize the tragedy.
Yes.
To make sense of the tragedy. And I'm guessing, Greg, this speaks to the failures of the theological systems that organized religion still makes use of. Because you cannot, I guess people do, but it is not advisable to be loaded with answers for questions from 1962 when you are addressing questions that are being asked in 2023,
Yeah.
because the answers of 1962 might just not be,
Irrelevant.
yeah, they're just irrelevant. A lot has changed.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. And so we have these people who are loaded, who are given this truckload of answers for questions that the world is not asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when the world starts asking the questions that are relevant, like the question of death, I mean, we end up coming to talk about this issue of human suffering because I think it is a big component to why we do what we do and we act the way we do. And according to this research, organized religion is failing a given 15% of people in that regard because our answers they just don't cut it.
And that's absolutely right. And that's what I get back to my earlier comments. I think we as people of faith, we have obligation to, as the scripture encourages, to spread the good news of what Christianity, what God has done. And it is amazingly good news. But we also have an obligation to make this thing alive and current.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't be selling 10-year-old bread on the streets as fresh stuff. You need to have fresh bread to sell every day.
Yeah.
And I believe myself included, I have sometimes tried to sell stale bread.
Yeah.
So what it comes back to is that how do I see Christianity dealing with the challenges of today? How do I see Christianity engaging with the needs of people?
You know, Greg, just bring a current issue to the conversation here. Let's bring it to conversation here. Israel and Palestine.
Yes.
As we're speaking, there is war happening. Okay. And the two different groups and these are big religious institutions. I mean, we're talking Judaism, we're talking Islam, we're talking, these with a long history of faith and so on. And it is absolutely puzzling, failure to find a better word, where you will see online and even on the streets people from both sides of the conflict saying, we, the everyday people, do not want the war. They don't want it. I mean, we saw the same thing with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And there's the everyday people who are now running away, trying to find a safe place where they can raise their families and, just have a decent life. And they're saying, we don't want this. But the religious institutions behind this are still saying, well, back in the year of this, and this is what happened, and this is what happened, this is what happened, and this is why we are acting in this way. And I guess what we're saying here is that even in the current conflicts that are happening right in front of us, we are seeing this consistent use of events from yesteryears as a justification for the questions of today. And don't get me wrong, I think war, wherever it is wrong. While our language has adopted this concept of, this person won the war. I think no one wins in war.
I agree.
No one wins. And what exacerbates it is that here we are with questions of yesteryears, answers of yesteryears, trying to address the questions of today. And the people, like I say, I've said this before, I grew up in Southern Africa. There's a statement that, the proverb, I guess, that says, where elephants fight, the grass suffers.
Yeah.
And I'm saying in this case, the grass is saying, this is not what we want. But the elephants are saying, well, I'll tell you something, we know a thing or two about this. And they keep fighting. And people are walking away.
And I must say that, and I appreciate your saying, and it goes back to some of the other points that we've been looking at. I stand, 5,000 miles away from this battle.
Yeah.
Yet I see the Islam and I see the Israeli belief system at play here. So here we have Judaism, in essence, and we have Islam, in essence.
Yeah.
These are the two Abrahamic faiths that you hearken back, and here we are, millenniums later, and they're fighting. Yet their heritage is the same.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, it doesn't give credibility to either one of their religious organizations for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so if I were looking at it, I said, you know what? I'm not impressed by either one of what you have to say about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they are creating more unbelievers by what they're doing over there than they ever try to protect their enclave of belief system and ideology.
That I think is a fair argument. I have a fellow I was talking to not too long, grew up in North Korea, and he was telling me, now this is his story, he's telling me that where he grew up, everyone had to do military service. Okay. And the same is true of the guys who stay in South Korea. Okay. And he says where he stayed, right next to the border of the two places, I mean, they have family on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other members of the family, his age mates, are doing service on the other side and he's doing service on this side. And we all have times when we patrol the same area, and he says to me, and we're just praying that no one made a mistake, and then we're going to meet each other. And then what are we going to start firing at each other? We know each other.
Yeah.
But you have these two, and they have to do this. They have to do this because the elephants have said, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so here they are, and to them, in their mind, in their worldview, this doesn't make sense. I mean, let's bring it back home a bit. We have right here the indigenous community who are saying this issue of a border doesn't make sense to us. We have family in Canada, what you call Canada, and we have family across the border. We were visiting each other before you guys drew the lines.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to us. But then we will still insist that we are going to deal with this problem using the solutions that we have come up with a long time ago. It doesn't matter that they don't make sense. And I feel like organized religion sometimes does that also. And I think the researchers are onto something here, that we are holding on to these very irrelevant old answers. Partly, now this is my assumption, partly because the work of getting into the nasty everyday details of everyday living is probably intimidating. There's a 50% chance that whatever you come up with, you might be absolutely wrong. And we don't want to be associated with that. And so we would rather just say, no, we will not get involved. And I see why people would leave.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because life is a bit unscripted.
Just a bit.
Yeah, I can't predict. I can have plans about tomorrow,
Yeah.
but I can't predict that they are going to play out. I mean, even the Bible says that, you make the plans, but, that's all you can do. God directs the rest. So if my religion, if my religious inheritance, my organized religious system is failing to speak to the crisis I have, and only one of two things happen, or maybe just one thing happens, I am forced to reevaluate that system. Whenever people are in a crisis, I think they stop and reevaluate their system. And if the system has failed, they change it. Hence why I remember a Christian who once said, if your God cannot be relevant and change you, you change him. So it makes sense to me.
It is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your God can be relevant and change you, then you change your God.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works. I mean, I grew up in Southern Africa, as I've told you before, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay, if I worship this God and this God fails to deal with my problem, you come and offer another God. Yeah, I can accommodate one more God in my pantheon. Yeah, and I'll hear. But I think we have one more.
We do.
Okay,
We do.
what's the last one?
One more is we're losing about 11.4 to almost 12% because the church is unwelcoming.
Oh,
Which actually almost surprised me, because I have gone into some churches and it was I don't think I'm a difficult person to get along with, but I certainly didn't feel welcome.
you don't?
Well, maybe I must be nice on that one, but yeah.
And then you just felt unwelcomed.
Indifference is actually probably the term that I experienced.
How do you differentiate that?
Well, if you're here, you're not here.
So
prob-
what? Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you make a contribution,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so people are walking into these organized religious systems and they feel like they don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whether they're here or they're not, this train keeps moving. So get on board or get out kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share of experiences, and yeah, I see that. I see that. I see it in the language that is used in a lot of organized religions. It's a language that promotes the idea of us and them.
Yes.
And so if you're not us and using our internal language, you are a part of them, and so you easily get pushed aside.
Yeah.
Or no, you really don't matter.
Yeah.
You really don't matter, and I can see how people would say I have left because I felt unwelcomed. And then, you know, Greg, that also brings back a conversation we had. I mean, you know, to the people who are watching us, if you didn't watch our previous conversation, you know, about identification, gender.
Yes.
I mean, that's a hot topic, you know. But there are people who come and they don't feel welcomed. I wouldn't be surprised, Greg, if a part of this 11.4% is actually people who felt like they were not welcomed because of how they identify. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a fair assumption. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it could be that. So now here's, I guess, the question, the $1 million question at the end of this. Has organized religion done any good? Like, is there something that is praiseworthy out of organized religion? Can we, you know, the statement, don't throw the baby with the bathwater?
Yeah, don't throw the baby out with bathwater.
Yeah. Does organized religion still have a place that it could play? If so, what or how? What do you think?
It's a great question. I'd actually like to have our viewers and people that are watching us make a comment on that, because that's an exceptional question. From my perspective, I think organized religion has historically had some really interesting things that have been able to contribute.
Yeah.
If you back up in time and you look at organized religion starting with the Israelites coming out of Egypt, that is really, in my opinion, when we start to see a formalization of a organized religion. They established camp rules. They established all sorts of rules that helped them navigate the wilderness. It helped them understand who God is. And ultimately, you see when they got to that promised land, they still had organized religion to a greater degree, and how they work through forgiveness issues, how they work through family issues. There was a method and a system in place.
Yeah.
So in many respects, historically, I think organized religion has been a very powerful point. It is, to a large degree, given us the Judeo-Christian understanding of many of the laws and regulations, and primarily family laws and civil laws that we have today can be pointed back to some of the work that is being done in organized religion.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. It has given us a
framework,
a structure.
Yeah. So when you look at the history, has organized religion made a contribution? Yes, it has. Now, in all fairness, I think we also have to point out that organized religion is organized many devastating events to other organizations and other religious groups.
Yeah. There has been a lot of, to use a phrase we've used here, a lot of blood on the streets.
Yes.
Organized religion does not have clean hands. That is fair. If we're going to talk about bringing nuance into this conversation, that is a fair statement to put out there. I would also think that organized religion has given people community. And I mean, our psychological framework, the way we function as human beings is that we need to belong somewhere. And organized religion has created this family that, you you move throughout the Islamic world, and there are ways in which you can see your fellow brothers and sisters, from the way they dress, from how they keep themselves. And you could even at sometimes take a wild guess at someone, and you go to them and say, Assalamu alaikum, and they will respond. And then suddenly there's that, what's the English word? Camaraderie? Organized religion has given people that. I mean, if you're a Christian, you move from one end of the world to the other, and you can walk into, people should, forgive me for this poor illustration. It's like walking into McDonald's. Whether you're in China or you're in the US,
you know the menu.
You know the menu. What you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it gives you this sense of community where you can say, I belong to something so big, bigger than myself, bigger than my little small community where I am,
Yes.
And then in places where you feel like a stranger, like I said, you travel halfway across the world to the other side of the world, I guess maybe, and you go to a different school, and they have different society, different values, and the comfort of having someone say to you, Assalamu alaikum. And you're like, someone who gets me.
Yeah.
I think organized religion has given us that sense of community. Again, to be fair to the argument, it sounds like organized religion is losing it with each passing day. Christianity, in particular, is losing it with each passing day. And we gotta be able to fix this. Now, here's a question, Greg. Is this something that the institution can address, or it's the people as individuals who make this choice? Because I'm of the impression, I think I've asked you this question a million times before, I don't think institutions change that easily. I think it takes a crisis that's going to threaten the very existence of the institution for the institution to accommodate change. I think the historical record will back me up on that. Most institutions will not change unless their very existence, or let me say, will not entertain change unless their very existence is threatened. And it could be a financial crisis, it could be, then suddenly the institution is willing to say, okay, maybe we should relook at this. Greg, I think it's people.
I agree.
I think it's people who can do something about it.
And I think there is the other question that I would like to ask, have you comment on. Does organized religion today have a place in modern life?
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one. I would say yes. But a lot of change has to happen not at the institutional level, but at the individual level.
That's interesting, because just a moment ago you were saying is that for institutions to change, it needs something dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're saying is that for it to be relevant today, it actually has to happen on an individual basis.
Yeah, because I don't think the institution has the systems that allow it to change when there is no crisis. But the individuals who see what's happening can choose to be different in how they interact with people. So I can make the choice wherever I am to be more welcoming. I can make the choice wherever I am to make sure that how I operate this system does not hurt the next person. I can make that decision. Because ultimately, while we can sit here and say the institution did A, B, C, D, I think in what it looks like on ground level is that it is people in the name of the institution who did A, B, C, D. And people were hurt and they left. So I think, you know, have you seen that? It's old now. I mean, there was a time when there was this bumper sticker that people used to, like, you know, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
I think there's value to that. I can choose to be the change I want to see in organized religion. And I can carry myself in that way. And there's a text. I want to read something here. Let me see if I can magically pull it out. Take you back to Hebrews. I mean, this is just a fascinating argument here. Hebrews chapter 10. Mr. Director, you do your thing.
Yeah.
I want this on the screen so we can see it, we can engage with it. And I'm going to start reading it from verse 24.
Excellent.
Okay, verse 24. And it sounds to me, now, you know, I'm no theologian, I guess. It sounds to me like this issue of should we give up on meeting together, which can be organized religion, was at the center of this conversation. And here's what it says, verse 24. Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Okay. So if there is a reason why organized religion should exist, one of them is that we should spare one another, we should encourage one another, we should, you know, motivate one another towards love and good deeds. Just to show kindness. Yeah. And then it says, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. So if there's a reason, I think,
Yes.
of why I think organized religion still has a place in society, it should be that place where I can go to and walk away saying, I needed that. I feel encouraged. I needed that embrace of love. I know this community loves me. Okay. I need to be able, as someone who has had multiple experiences of moving into cultures that are different from the culture I grew up, I want to be able to go to a different culture because I love learning about people. And when I go to that culture, someone will reach out and say, hey, you belong. And I think organized religion should be able to do that. And if it does that, I think the trends will start to change again.
Yep.
And instead of empty seats, those seats will start to fill up because people know that this is relevant to them.
It's really interesting that what you've highlighted there, because I would have, if you'd asked me earlier today, I would have said, well, you know, you got to get the theology correct. It's a theological issue. You've got to change your understanding of the Bible, and that would have been one of my top things. The problem is that people don't really understand the scriptures, and and we could do this all as Bible talk, but it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's about connecting with people,
Yeah.
accepting people, loving them, and encouraging them.
Yeah.
The Bible talk is good, but it is actually the human connection
Yeah.
It is the human connection that actually what we crave and what we want and what is attractive about it.
Yeah. Let me throw out a statement out there. Throw out a statement, see if it makes some sense. And maybe let me suggest we talk about this next time you and I have a conversation. You know, religion is primarily about belonging and not peculiarity.
Huh.
It's primarily about belonging and not peculiarity. And I think the moment we start weaponizing how peculiar we are, we lose people. But when we say you belong, you know, I know we need to have theological structures of some sort, but as we work through the theological differences, hey, you belong. You are a part of this family. I think that goes a long way.
That's really intriguing, because typically a person has to come to a certain understanding and accept certain criteria, and then you're initiated into the group.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that the moment you walk through that door, you're in.
You belong.
You're in. You belong. Yeah. Exactly. This is your spiritual home.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
You're welcome.
Our theological differences.
Yeah, we'll talk about this some other time.
We'll work through it, but
Yeah.
you belong. Someone once asked the late chief rabbi, I say to him, Rabbi, why is it that the Jews fight the hardest with other Jews? Why is the theological discussion just so brutal amongst Jews? And I mean, you can remove Jews there and put Christians or put whatever you want. But I find the answer intriguing. He says, oh, that's because our most vicious fights are usually with family, because we love each other. We know we can disagree and you can walk away angry, but you're still my brother.
Oh, yeah.
You're still my sister. You're still my mom. You're still my dad. No matter what you do. And so when it has that pre-context of belonging,
Yeah.
we can talk about absolutely anything.
That's right.
But as long as that context of saying, I actually still belong here is there, like, it's a safe place. But when you remove belonging and all you want to do is prioritize the hard conversations, it ceases to be a safe place. And the numbers show it.
Yep.
Greg, you and I can talk the whole time, my friend.
But that's a powerful point, and that is a critical point, is that we need to understand it's about a connection. It's about that belonging. And I really like that, because once you are part of the family of God,
Yeah.
you're in.
You are in.
You're in.
Yeah.
The only person that can take you out is yourself.
The only person that can take you out is you. You can choose to walk away. But even as you walk away,
Yeah,
you belong.
that's right. Yeah.
You belong. This will still be your home. You belong. Once more, please join in this conversation. I mean, we are big on context, on nuance, on conversation. And in celebration of this festival of conversation, if you're watching at home, please go online. Just support this by purchasing that t-shirt, you know. And every time you wear it, you are affirming that context, nuance, and conversation is important to the fabric of what it means to be human. And so I encourage you, just go online, just buy that. Buy that and support what's happening. Buy it as a gift for your friends. Buy it as a gift for family. Buy it for yourself. You know, just buy it And before you go there, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And we will meet again to discuss another religious meta-narrative. But until then, please may your life be open to more conversation, nuance, and remember you belong.